It should be a fun environment, should be a tough environment for Georgia to deal with on Saturday night in Auburn, Alabama, in Jordan-Hare Stadium, a night game against one of its rivals, the Auburn Tigers. But my real question is, are the Dogs going to be able to do what they want to do? Is this team going to pull off what it wants to pull off? What is that, Ryan? It's what we've talked about, honestly, probably more than anything else over the last 8 months. It's running the football. It's winning the ground game. Is Georgia going to be able to do that on Saturday night? I'm looking at all the numbers that are relevant. Rushing yards per game, rushing yards allowed per game, what Auburn did against Texas A&M, what Auburn did against Oklahoma, what Georgia has done against its 3 SEC opponents so far. Georgia's done a very good job in the ground game. And when I say ground game, I'm talking about running the football on both sides. Stopping the run on defense, running the football on offense. I think that most games, you're going to see the team that won that battle, that stat's going to be reflective of the winner. For many reasons. Some of that's circumstantial, some of that is it takes that to win. Georgia lost the rushing battle lost Alabama despite winning the rushing battle. But weird things happen in Georgia-Alabama matchups. Georgia's done really well at this. Auburn has been better against out-of-conference teams than they have against teams in the SEC. In fact, they're actually struggling so far offensively against its 2 SEC opponents on the road. Now they get to host one in Georgia. That is my intro. This is Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. Thanks for joining me to talk about what this game looks like in terms of running the football between Auburn and Georgia on Saturday night. Make sure you are checking out Sales Hatch. Look, when it comes to sales, they make it easy for you. They do the hard parts. They get you that first meeting. They make those connections for you. I've got the barcode down below to go check out what they do. Make sure you're going over there. It's a new partner for us that we are happy to be working with. And I've been botching up these ad reads for it. So make sure you're going and checking out Sales Hatch. Regardless, I think I said my name. It's Ryan Curley if I haven't said it. Welcome in again. So let's examine Auburn first. Let's talk about Auburn first. I've got numbers pulled up in front of me. Tough game for them against A&M a couple weeks ago now, right? Auburn enjoyed a bye week heading into this matchup with Georgia, but they had to deal with A&M after a game in which I thought that the officiating was really bad and it really gypped the Auburn Tigers and did not help them in winning that game against Oklahoma. They had to turn around, go to A&M. So how did they perform against a team that's ranked in the top 10 in Texas A&M? Well, the Aggies rushed for over 200 yards on them at home, and they stopped Auburn on the ground for the most part, only allowing 52 yards on the ground from the Auburn Tigers. That is a huge win for A&M there. Now, A&M didn't do much scoring, right? Only 16 points. Only the 1 touchdown. But they still got the job done and shut down an Auburn offense. This was is passing offense that's not super explosive, right? Jackson Arnold gets 125 yards in that game. No touchdowns. He does better through the air against Oklahoma with 200 yards, but Auburn, again, fails to run the football really well against Oklahoma, playing from behind for a majority of that game. Not from far behind, though. Not to the point where you have to throw the ball a lot. But these two games were really different, and I watched almost all of Auburn, Oklahoma. I only watched a little bit of A&M Auburn, and now I'm stat surfing, as I'd like to call it. Different results. Oklahoma didn't run the ball well against Auburn, but Auburn didn't run the ball well against either of those teams. Now, when you think about that in terms of this matchup, Georgia's running for over 200 yards per game. They're top 5 in the conference, and they're only allowing about 83 yards per game on the ground. That's also top 5 in the conference. Georgia beat Alabama in the rushing game. Obviously, they lost that game, but they outrushed Alabama by over 100 yards, had almost 230 on the ground against the Tide. Against Kentucky, almost 200 on the ground, and held Kentucky to about 50 rushing yards. Really, really good number. And that the bright spot of Kentucky's offense this season has been a solid running attack, and that did not work between the hedges in Athens against the Dogs. Now, the numbers are reflecting that Auburn has not ran the ball well against two SEC opponents on the road. It should be easier to do that at home against Georgia, but this Georgia team is stopping the run just about as well as anyone else in the conference. There's no one that's winning the ground game the way that Missouri is so far. That's been ridiculous, averaging almost 300 yards on the ground, only allowing about 62 on the ground. So that has been – no one's touching those numbers right now. But Georgia is clumped in there with Ole Miss, Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, with some of the better ground games. It's one of the only ones that's in the top 5 on both sides. In fact, Georgia and Missouri are the only two schools that are top 5 in both rushing offense and rushing defense this season. So I think Auburn's in for some trouble. Now, something that we know is mobile quarterbacks have typically given Georgia problems, right? Haynes King gave Georgia problems. Jalen Milroe gave Georgia problems. I don't know that Jackson Arnold is quite that, but can, as Kirby Smart said on Monday, can rip off a 60-yard run, can win an off-schedule play, can take an RPO for 70 yards, right? Those are things that are in Auburn's wheelhouse. Georgia just needs to do what it's been doing, and I think to find success in Auburn this week, and that is starting with the ground game. You saw a game against Tennessee for Georgia where they won the ground game. They rushed for around the 200 yards, a little bit under 200 yards, and they also made a ton of plays through the air. So you know that Georgia can do both. You're not seeing that from Auburn quite yet. You're not seeing complete football games in the conference. In fact, you're not really seeing complete football games at all. They're not running the ball well against SEC teams. And in the case against A&M, they didn't stop the run either, right? John Mateer didn't have to do too much through the air. He made plays against Auburn in that Oklahoma game, but he didn't have to be Superman. Marcel Reed didn't have to be Superman because the defense held up Auburn. The Tigers are struggling offensively against SEC opponents. I kind of think that'll happen again. Now, Georgia hasn't struggled offensively as much against SEC opponents. They are running really well. And in a big game where they needed it to happen, in what turned out to be a shootout, Gunnar Stockton and Georgia's passing offense got the job done as well. And that turned out to be a really balanced offensive game for the Dogs up in Knoxville. All these numbers kind of tell me you lean Georgia in this matchup, that spread's probably not quite big enough at 3.5. But I do think it's going to be difficult. I do think Auburn's going to bring, maybe their A game, maybe not, but they're going to bring a better game at home at night against a Georgia than it probably did going on the road to Norman and to College Station. But I thought it was really interesting to dive into these rushing numbers. Do you think that's the main piece of this game, or is it going to be that Jackson Arnold and Gunnar Stockton need to make a ton of plays through the air to win? I'm going to default to this a lot in Georgia matchups this year because it's been such an emphasis, and it's kind of the identity of this football team right now. It starts with the ground game. And right now that favors Georgia when you look at the numbers and you take in the context. I think that don't be surprised if this is a close game, right? Vegas is saying that it's going to be a close game. But when I watch Auburn, when I watch Georgia, I think that there's more explosive offensive potential for the Dogs compared to the Tigers. I think that you would trust Gunnar Stockton's arm a little bit more than Jackson Arnold's arm. I think that Gunner's made more plays through the air from what I've watched compared to what Jackson Arnold has done. But this is one of those games where, like I said, weird environment. It could get dicey. I just think if Georgia runs the ball well, it's going to be tough to stop the Dogs. That's going to be the case against almost every team, maybe minus Alabama, because that didn't happen. What do you think about the run game? I think that's where it starts and probably finishes as well. Sales Hatch, other links you need are down below. Appreciate you watching.